Feminist, and this is Feminist in the Kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about intersectionality, and we're going to be making not one, not three, but 2 lasagnas to talk about intersectionality. For those of you who don't know, intersectionality was a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to talk about how multiple identities and oppressions are interlocking. In layman's terms, this just means that the multiple parts of your identity, race, class, gender, sexuality, etc., all combine together to form you. And these your identities shape your experiences and how you view the world. So today we're going to be making 2 different lasagnas to talk about how these intersections of race, class, and gender combine on top of each other to form the way that we shape our experiences. So, let's make some lasagnas. To start off with, we're going to make, I should probably tell you what type of lasagnas we're making today. Today we're making what you would consider a typical lasagna, which will have your meat, your cheese, and stuff like that. And we're also going to be making a vegetarian zucchini quinoa lasagna, so it'll be delicious. And recipes, again, will be in the links on the YouTubes, or if you're watching this on my blog, it'll be underneath the video on the blog in Schworms. So yeah, we're going to be making, starting off with how to make our noodles, which represents gender in this situation. So for our mythical norm lasagna, we are going to start with your regular lasagna noodles, and these are just what you would normally get on the store. They're called lasagna noodles. And for gender, it's going to be quinoa, which we're going to cook with. So what I need to do is I need to put vegetable broth for the quinoa in this one, which I have done, and I need to get another pot to put water and noodles together. So we're waiting on the water to boil, so we can just edit this out, but we can talk. What questions do you have from the audience? We have a live studio audience today. Just kidding.
Someone once told me that intersectionality was not adding, it was multiplying.
Oh yeah, that's a great thing to bring up, other Abby. She's our camera woman today. So it's the idea that we're not just adding identities together. It's not like, oh, we have your race and your identity, and kind of just 1 + 1 = 2. It's really the multiplication of these things. You can't just assume that it's not like a layered cake. You don't have your race, and then you add your class, and then you add your gender. And you might think, Abby, a lasagna is a poor way to do that because it's in layers. It's okay, we'll get to that, don't worry. But it's really kind of a salad. You're mixing things all together, so you can't really take one thing out and replace it with another one. It's kind of all jumbled up together with all your experiences and where you've come from. So, there was something else I was going to say with that, but I totally forgot. Oh! There's this idea when we talk about intersectionality about the oppression Olympics. So using intersectionality, we think of who is the most underprivileged person. So they think about, okay, what is the most underprivileged race? What is the most underprivileged gender? And going from there. And that's not really helpful because we can't, this is not a ranking system. Everyone's experiences are different. And because there's so many different identities coming together, we can't just rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, who's the most or who's the least privileged. It really comes down to just the idea that all these experiences are different. So, yeah. Boiling water takes longer. See, I cut things because I knew that would take time, but I forgot about the boiling of water. With intersectionality, what we find out is that you experience things on multiple levels. I identify as a white, middle-class, bi, cisgendered person along with other things. But I don't stop doing one thing to become another thing. So I don't decide, wake up one day and go, I'm going to experience things only as a woman today. Or I don't walk around and say, I'm only going to experience things as a bi individual today. These things are always constantly happening together. So when I go to a place and I experience something, sometimes I don't know, is it because of my gender, is it because of my race that I experience these things, but that they happen together. For example, when it comes to an African-American woman, she might experience some form of racism at a store, maybe a clerk not helping her, and she might not know, is that because of my gender that I've been denied someone helping me, or my race, or is it an intersection of both of these things together? So with that in mind, you realize that a lot of your experiences are not just shaped by one thing, they're shaped by a bunch of different things. And this is related to the idea of identity politics, in which sometimes groups form together under the basis of one identity, such as race or class, and that everyone is assumed to be identical by that one identity point, such as African Americans. We can assume everyone who's in this identity politics group identifies as African American. However, within the term African American, you might have a lot of different identities coming together. For example, are there just women in the group? Are there men? Are there lesbians? Are there gay or straight people? All of these things come together to form how these experiences are shaped. So while identity politics is a great starting ground for coming up with activism and movements, you're not going to have one solidified group. It's a bunch of different people coming together. You can't rush these things, just like you can't rush feminism. It's not a change that could happen overnight. It's a gradual process. So like this water, we have to wait forever for change to happen, but it's happening, minuscule by minuscule detail. We just can't see it right away because it's water and the little bubbles take a while for them to become big bubbles. So we're waiting for water to boil. So after a very long and eventful time boiling water, it really is true that if you watch boiling water, it will not boil faster. I now know that through personal experience. It is time to actually assemble our lasagna, which is how we are going to be talking about intersectionality. So to start with, we are going to start with our grains, which is our lovely quinoa mixture, which will be our vegetarian lasagna, and what you would consider your normal lasagna. We're not going to put that on the table because it might be a little hot. So we're just going to actually keep this right here. So for this, we're going to start by putting in our cheeses, and our cheeses represent class. Our grains represent men and women. So our quinoa represents women, and our regular noodles back there represent men. So we're going to start by putting in cheese, which is cream cheese. And you might be like, Abby, this is so weird. And I agreed with you the first time I had this lasagna. It was actually quite tasty. So put in some of this. This is a really slow process. So this talks about class. So within class, we have classism, which is that we like to view the lower, okay, I'm just gonna, this is really weird, so I'm sorry. But we usually have a bias against people who reside in the lower or working class as saying that they are not real citizens and they're taking advantage of the system. And a lot of times you'll hear words like trailer trash, which really puts them as a lower level. They're seen as dirty, which is not true. So for this, we can just say that cream cheese is lower class in this example. So I'm going to steal a spoon and mix this all up together. Found a spoon. So, and as we're seeing, the quinoa and the cream cheese are mixed together. We can't have one without the other. So already we can see that your gender and your class shape how you view the world. If you're a poor or working class woman, you will have a different experience compared to a man who might be of the same class or of a different class. So we're mixing that mixture together. Yay! Now we have to do our regular mix. I really want to eat this at home. And for this cheese, we're going to use ricotta cheese, which is the typical cheese. So we're going to say typical cheese is, for a lasagna anyway, is upper middle class. And how we view citizenship is we tend to see that the average American is upper middle class, that they have access to insurance, medical care, and that they'll have access to university. And my fingers are really gross, so it's really hard for me to open this plastic. So that's fun. Have you open it? Here, I'll throw it to you.
Here, I'll throw it to you.
Nothing to see. Don't fuck with cheese or it'll bite you back. Another fun fact to remember is, regardless of whether you identify as a feminist or not, if you're using somebody's kitchen, please clean up your mess, which I promise I'll do. So yeah, we have our ricotta cheese, and ricotta cheese, it has some privileges. So it's allowed to hang out with more cheese, which is basically because this recipe calls for this cheese stick. So it gets to hang out with a lot of people. Wow. So at this point, our masculine noodles haven't been hanging out with our cheese yet, but I promise that they will. I'm just following what the recipe says. Sometimes it doesn't always work A for A with my metaphors. So now we're going to move on to assembling our lasagna, which we're going to start with the sauces, which represent sexuality. So in this one, for the mythical norm lasagna, we're going to have a straight pasta sauce. And then this one, for our vegetarian lasagna, which is a girl, is going to represent our lesbian sauce. So what we do is, I have to read the recipe. All right, so we're going to put it at the baking dish. Vegetarian, not vegetarian. So we put the sauce on the bottom. Sauce on the bottom. You know, if I was really smart, I would have just used the same sauce for each one and told you that they represented different things, and then I could have saved a sauce. However, we just go with the flow here on Feminist in the Kitchen, and we just do whatever we feel like. So, next comes in, we have the sauce. Whee! And now, we have the meat of our show, which represents, I have to look, which represents race. So there's a lot of different types of meats out there, but for purposes of this, we're going to do our zucchini, which represents the protein in the show, will represent a minority race, so just pick one in your head. And then our masculine lasagna will be white. However, I'm a vegetarian, so for the purpose of the show, you need to use your imagination. This is Italian sausage. It is not a can of beans. All right, say it with me now.
This?
No, you don't actually have to say it with me. But yeah, this is meat. It's protein, but it's an actual meat. So just pretend it's not a can of beans. So we're gonna get some zucchini from behind here. Layering. We're going to put this down here, and we're putting it on top of each other. So see, all these different identities are mixing together, and while they're layered here, when you put it in your mouth, you taste all the different parts together, and when you chew it up, I mean, you're not going to be able to separate the beans from the cheese, and if you can do that in your mouth, I'd be really impressed. So you're tasting all these different things together, which is kind of like experience. You don't just taste one part of who you are. You're not like, I'm only identifying this experience through a feminist woman lens. You have to talk about race and class too. Much like food, you eat it all together unless you separate it. So yeah, we have zucchinis on this side, beans. This is gonna be fun. This would probably look better if it was meat, but we don't do meat on this show. Sorry. But if you're gonna try the recipe at home, you can do that. Too many bowls. Now we put on the grains. This is now chilled. You know, you'd think this big table would be enough for all of my stuff. It's not. So, now we're going to finally get all this mixture stuff going together. Quinoa! This is your gender! Yum. Yum, 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 yum. Mix together. Put all of that stuff on there. Delicious. Usually when I make this, I make it wrong, and I don't layer it correctly, but that's okay, because you don't get everything right on your first try. And does it really matter what the layers come in? No. So we're spreading out this mixture. Yay! Spreading. Again, all these things are mixing together to create your identity. However, my spoon is very sticky, so the mixing of identities is a lot harder in this lasagna than it is in real life. A lot of times you don't even know that your multiple oppressions are happening at once, because you're not sometimes thinking about it unless you're actively thinking about it. And this is a great opportunity as I'm putting on these, mixing this up, is that with intersectionality, it allows you to both be privileged and oppressed at the same time. Unless you're this mythical norm, which isn't even done yet, where you're all privileged, a lot of times people have multiple sites of oppression and privilege. For example, I am oppressed because I'm a woman and because I'm bi, but at the same time I suffer from, we'll call it suffer, but I also experience privilege because I identify as, and I am white. So with that, we have our quinoa on top, and so we're going to put on our regular noodles. These are the uncooked noodles. Do not put uncooked noodles in there. I wasn't even thinking. Regular noodles. This on here. So I've never made normal lasagna before, which just goes to show you that the mythical norm doesn't actually exist. Well, I mean, it might exist to some people, but not for me, because, yeah. And I've been using this term mythical norm a lot lately, and you're probably like, Abby, I don't know what this is. The mythical norm is the idea that when we think about what a normal person is, we usually think of it in terms of a white, middle-class, heterosexual male. This is not true. There are a lot of different types of people. However, when the first thing that pops into your mind as a person, you get the image of a white, middle-class, heterosexual male. For example, one example of this would be flesh-colored Band-Aids. What color of flesh are we looking at? Usually it represents a white-ish, it's not even white, it's more of a tannish colored Band-Aid. But that doesn't represent everybody's flesh. So when we think about this mythical norm, it doesn't actually exist. Not all the same people are the same way. And I'm getting really distracted by the people behind me. So yeah, so now we're going to move on to adding more cheese, because more cheese equals more please. So we have our mythical norm, and they like, you know, being white. This is the whitest structure of cheese I've ever seen. So putting that on there. We're going to put this in the oven now. So they're going to be put in at the same time. However, because of their experiences, one will have to come out sooner than the other one. I'm not going to tell you which one though. Ah! One lasagna in the oven. Lasagna number 2 in the oven. And with that, we have to wait about 35 to 40 minutes for them to be cooked. So after 35 to 40 minutes, your intersectionality should be done cooking. Much like life, the longer you put it in there, the more experiences you have, so the hotter it can get. We can go with that. So I'm going to take these lasagnas out of the oven, and then we're going to put them on the table and eat them. So yeah, I'm going to go do that now. Safety first. Nom, 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 nom. Safety first. Okay. Oh, this one's the messy one. Mythical norm did not turn out perfect. Whoa, look at that. So we have our mythical norm. I should probably shut the oven. Don't want to be wasting energy. And turn the oven off. That's always important. Wrong way. So we have our 2 lasagnas. We have our zucchini quinoa lasagna, and then we have our mythical norm lasagna. If you look at them, you can definitely tell that they are different. But once we eat them, we can obviously tell that all the different parts of identity come together to create different tastes, or in intersectionality with people's case, different lived experiences. And while these are just 2 lasagnas we made, we could always make more with different parts of each of them or new ingredients, because no one can share the same lived experiences. Our identities, there are multiple different parts, and they're not all the same. One identity can change your whole viewpoint of how you look at the world and how you experience things. So with that, we're going to let them cool maybe, or we might just stick this hot mess in our mouth. And that is the end of our show. We'll come back next week. Or we're going to come back and look. So you can see our lasagnas. Yeah, so we have this one and this one. It's gonna be a cooking show.
It's just my